Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to Symphony number 102. Only two more numbered symphonies to go, but don't worry. We are not 2 away from the end. We're 5 away from the end because we will still be doing symphonies A and B and the Symphony Concertante. So fear not. The end is not quite as nigh as it might otherwise seem. But yes, we're getting to it, and I'm looking forward to it, to be honest with you, because this has been one hell of a project, and I think finishing it's going to give me anyway, an enormous feeling of satisfaction, and then we can start telling the world to go on the Haydn Symphony Crusade. That will be your job as well as mine. Anyway, Symphony number 102 has no nickname. It should have had a nickname. It should have been called The Miracle, which is what we called number 96, because this is the symphony where the miracle actually happened. The miracle was the fact that a chandelier collapsed and nobody died because they'd all moved forward to hear the music more closely or look at something, or who knows why they did it. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is that scholarship considers this to be one of the greatest Haydn symphonies, perhaps the greatest, along with number 104. But you know, when you have so many great works, comparisons are invidious. It really makes no sense to make them because it all depends on what qualities you're looking for. The qualities in this particular symphony that make it so outstanding are its closeness to the procedures of Beethoven. Beethoven learned a hell of a lot from this symphony. He really, really did, particularly in its first movement. And we're going to talk about some of those features as the music progresses. But right now, I would like to make a totally separate point, actually, because this symphony has possibly the most marvelous example of thematic transformation in all of Haydn. And it really tells us something about how Haydn operates, because it begins with an introduction. And the introduction begins with a unison. What's the symphony in? It's in B flat major, I think, right? Wait a minute. Ooh, there we go. I did that properly, so she didn't turn off the computer and mess us up. Thank you, Finster. Okay. Anyway, it's in B flat major, right? I mean, I never pay much attention to those things. I probably should, but you know me. I'm just not a theory guy. I'm a form whore, but I'm not a theory guy. I should be more of one, because the older I get, the more I'm conscious of the fact that I lack the vocabulary to talk about some of the things I'm hearing. And I would like to have more of that vocabulary, but, you know, life is really too short. And okay, it's on disc number 18. This is the Naxos series with Barry Wordsworth and the Capella Istropolitana. And it's in B flat major. All that just to find out it's in B flat. Okay, so it probably starts with a B flat. A unison B flat, and then there's a diaphanous lyrical thing with a brief little tail. Da 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 da. Yum ba dum ba da 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 da. Like in those smaller notes. That's the opening, and then it does it again. It does it twice. So it's unison, and then sort of an answer. Well, that idea, unison, answer, is going to be extremely important in this symphony. It becomes the second subject of the first movement. Remember, we tend to think that, well, something has to resemble something. It's got to be the first thing we hear. Well, Haydn doesn't operate that way. It doesn't have to be the first thing we hear. It can be anything that we hear. So that very slow, very lyrical sort of opening, gentle opening, becomes a really bold Beethovenian second subject. Bum, da da dum bum 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 yum yum, bum, like that. And it becomes the second subject, which is also the first episode of the Sonata Rondo finale. Da 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 ba 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 da da ba 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 ba. It's really cool. And what I want you to keep in mind is what I've said from the very beginning of this operation here, which is that Haydn conceives of music not just as tunes, but as materials these materials can be anything. They can be, we saw in the military symphony how he makes something material out of dynamics, out of a crescendo. It could be a timbre, just the sound of an instrument. It could be whatever. Well, here it's the object he's dealing with is unison, lyrical statement, unison, lyrical statement, in that order, two of them. And he does it multiple times in the symphony. Now, you may not notice first time through that we're hearing something that we've heard before, but subconsciously we know it. And the more we listen, the more we begin to be aware of the unity of material, which is characteristic of the symphony. So I've prepared an example where I give you all three versions of this particular idea and its transformations in the symphony. Its initial statement and then two transformations are, I think, some of the most marvelous things in all of Haydn. It's really, really fascinating. So I'm going to play it one with little pauses between them. Here are the three transformations of this very basic idea. Now, if that is not super cool, I don't know what is. Because that, in a sense, even more than, playing with tunes and whatnot, is what symphonic writing is all about. This idea of developing ideas, working with them, milking them for all of the different qualities that they have. Because first, it's a little ominous with this very, very, evanescent, sort of lyrical response. The second time, it's hard and punchy, a little bit pensive, minor key, bum, do 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 do, bum, that sort of thing. Very Beethovenish. The contrast between loud and soft, between hard and lyrical, and it's wonderful. And then in the finale, it's opera. It's comic opera. It's just a joke. It's witty, and it's the same idea. And Haydn gets three wholly different expressive meanings out of the same idea. And it's just marvelous. It's marvelous. You get to hear the man truly work with his ideas. So that's something that I want you to know up front. You're going to hear it. And then, once we know that, I don't need as many examples from this symphony as from some of the others, because the ideas that Haydn uses in some of these moves are really quite long, quite extensive, actually. We need to play them through, but we don't have to break them up into bits, because that's not how this particular symphony is operating as much. So let's listen to the full introduction. You'll see that after we hear that opening statement, which Haydn will reuse, the introduction proceeds to develop the sort of wandering lyrical theme a bit. And that's basically all it does. It's very, very beautiful and very serious, actually. Here it is. Now, the exposition of the first movement has three main ideas. You've already heard the second subject. The first subject, like that, is very energetic, forward-moving, driving, and between them comes motion music. And the motion music has what's arguably the most important idea in the whole movement. It consists of another motive. Bum ba da 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 dum, bum ba da 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 dum, bum bum bum, bum bum bum, like that. And you need to know the motion music as well as the main themes of the movement because it's every bit as important. It also has an accompanying idea, cha-da-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, cha-da-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, cha-da-ta-ta, like that, which sometimes becomes thematic, and which is also very important, but not quite as important as those other three. But if you keep in mind those, well, let's say four ideas, you've got the whole material of the movement. And you can hear what Haydn does with it, which is just amazing. We'll get to that in a minute. So let's listen to the exposition of the first movement. Keep in mind the opening tune, the motion music, and the second subject, which we've already heard. Wonderful, wonderful music, and it drives forward. That's also part of its Beethoven-ish character. The music is quite loud. I mean, for long stretches, it doesn't relax. It maintains a very, very high level of tension and a consistent forward impetus. I mean, Haydn's always very good at that, but this symphony is really special that way. So that's the exposition. Now the development is amazing. I was actually torn about how to treat this development because it uses all of the materials that we've just heard and does stuff with them. It's a very long development section. It's a good 2 minutes or just about, which is a big chunk of the movement. And, the more you listen to it, the more amazing it becomes. You'll hear a lot with the motion music, but it starts essentially with the second subject, and then goes immediately back to the first subject, interspersed with motion music, and then it goes back to the second subject, and then we hear a fabulous working up of da 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 da, that motion music motive. It's actually worked up as a triple canon, which is like contrapuntally amazing. You hear it running through the orchestra like that, and then the first theme comes back on the solo flute, and then we hear more motion music, and then just as it seems to die away, there's a roll on the timpani and a big timpani crescendo that propels the music over the hump and into the recapitulation, and I leave that in this example. So I'm going to play the whole development section. You don't have to keep in mind all of those things at once. I mean, I was going to do like take it apart in little, 10 or 15-second sniglets and play you all of the things that Haydn does with all of the motives. But I don't think that really helps, because you have to hear how he puts the whole thing together, how it's a gigantic continuous paragraph, essentially, that's made up of all of these different elements that we've heard before. And it's the continuity as much as the ingenuity with what Haydn does with it that is so, absolutely remarkable. So here is the development section, the whole thing leading in to that exciting, propulsive timpani crescendo that ushers in the recapitulation. I mean, it's really rich, this music. Rich in developmental ideas, in the transformations of these themes into things that are totally unlike what we get when they're initially presented. It's really marvelous. And you can listen to the rest of the movement. Well, actually, we're going to play it, some of the rest of the movement, later. I have a special purpose for the rest of the movement. But the other thing to keep in mind, and I'm just going to tell you about it and let you hear it for yourself, is that something that Beethoven really learned is that Haydn's recapitulations, that is, the return to the original material, as you've heard throughout so many of these symphonies, are often very, very different. Sometimes totally recomposed, often extremely compressed, and so to leave room for further development in what will become the coda to the movement, or the conclusion, the wrapping up. Haydn likes to keep developing things, but in this particular symphony, Haydn's practice is very close to what Beethoven does, and Beethoven's practice is an amalgamation of Mozart and Haydn, because Mozart's recapitulations are usually very regular. He presents all the same thematic material in the order we originally heard it. If it's in a minor key piece, he'll transpose the second subject into a minor key so that it stays in the same key. But basically, Mozart does very straightforward, well-balanced recapitulations, and then there are very few codas. He just stops at the end. Haydn, on the other hand, develops and does digressions and things within a very compact space. But Haydn achieves symmetry by usually bringing in a lovely tune that sort of rounds everything off at the end, or waiting to use, say, the tune of the second subject the way we originally heard it until the very end, something like that, that says, yes, we're here after all. But he keeps us guessing up until the last bar sometimes. So in this particular symphony, he does sort of an amalgamation of both. The initial recapitulation is very regular. You hear the opening tune, you hear the second subject, and then there's a coda. This is what Beethoven started to do. A mixture of the Mozart and Haydn procedures. A fairly regular recapitulation, and then a very inventive coda. And that expanded the length, the size of the movements, because he wasn't chopping stuff out to make it more compressed in the recap, and he was able to still have a sometimes extremely developmental and extensive coda as well. So he had the best of both worlds. And that's one of the reasons that this symphony is usually recognized as being proto-Beethovenian. So I'm just letting you know. So now we come to the second movement. Now the second movement, the great Donald Francis Tovey, the English musicologist, said contains the most wonderful orchestration before Beethoven. I think it contains some of the most wonderful orchestration, including Beethoven, personally. But oh my God, is it gorgeous. It's really gorgeous. If you want to get technical about it, you could say that it is in sonata form, with a exposition repeat, which is modified by being reorchestrated, and then a development section and a recapitulation. But the truth is, the way you hear it is you hear the same tune 4 times. It's a very big tune. It's like a 2-minute long tune. And it plays without repeats, without internal repeats. It's just a big, gorgeous, long melody, which is unusual for Haydn, because Haydn usually writes short melodies that assemble themselves into larger bits. But this is a big, romantic, long-breathed, gorgeous thing, which actually he took from a piano trio written around the same period. There's some debate as to what came first, but the piano trio is in F-sharp minor, a very unusual key. This movement is not in F-sharp minor, but it's a very, very beautiful late Haydn piano trio. And this movement is so beautiful that it's not surprising that Haydn wanted to reuse it. What he does in this particular movement is that he takes the movement as it stands, but then enriches the repetition of the melody with the amazing orchestration that Tovey spoke of. The amazing orchestration consists of a solo cello, which plays along solo for the whole melody, counterpoints and triplets and things like this. Da, 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 da. You hear this cello buzzing on the bottom. And then he asks for muted trumpets and timpani. Timpani mutes are usually accomplished by tossing something on top of the drum. Sometimes you put a cover, like a cloth or something over the drum to just muffle them a little bit. Or you can stuff your wallet on top of it. I've done that, as long as it doesn't have anything that jingles in it. And muted trumpets, which are not unusual. You stuff trumpets in the mute, so that gives them a more acidulous, snarling kind of sound. Although you don't really hear them all that prominently. Only a couple spots where they pierce the texture. But like I said, from a listener's point of view, it's the same tune 4 times. First you hear it straight out, then you hear it with the addition of the trumpets and drums and all this. Just gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's so romantic sounding. My God, it's unbelievable. Then there's a development section, which is a little bit abbreviated. You don't get all the way through the tune. It comes to a abrupt climax and then a return to the original tune with a final climax with the muted trumpets piercing through the texture rather nicely. And then it just ends with a very brief coda. So, same tune 4 times, but so beautiful that each time you hear it, it's just orgasmic. It really is. It's a lot like the slow movement of Symphony No. 88 in that sense, where he's just featuring a tune that's so lovely that the orchestra can't get it out of its head and doesn't even try, really. So here is the enriched orchestration version of the melody, which is technically, I suppose, the written out repeat of the exposition in a sonata form movement. The movement is its own form. You don't have to worry about other models. It just is what it is. And it's so beautiful that it can't be anything else. Here it is. How's that for gorgeous? I mean, really, it's so timeless and forward-looking in its beautiful, lyrical, emotional fulsomeness. It's, oh gosh, it's amazing. Okay, so the minuet is actually a variant of the theme of the slow movement, which we've seen a lot in these symphonies. Quite often, the inner movements are related and the outer movements are related, right? And in this case, the theme of the minuet, dum ba dum dum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum ba da dum, it does that, which is quite similar to ya da 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 da. I mean, it's more flowery, but it's a tune that rises in 3 steps. Da 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 da, 2, 3, da 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 da, and then it goes up with a thing. Well, so does the minuet. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, ba da da, just like the slow movement does. So those ideas are related to each other. The central trio section is a lovely pastoral sort of folk-like thing, which I don't have to play. But I want you to hear the whole minuet because I want you to hear the relationship between that tune and the melody of the slow movement, which we just heard. So here is the full minuet without repeats, the outer sections of the minuet. And at last, we come to the finale. Let me get myself organized here. There we go. Now, I just said that the inner movements are related and the outer movements are related. Well, you already know the outer movements are related because of that second subject. Bang, da 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 da, bang, da da. Yeah, right? It's related to the introduction, it's related to the second subject of the first movement, and it's the second subject of the finale, always in the same place. Similar idea, completely different emotional ambience. However, the opening themes are also related, and that's very, very plain when you hear them next to each other, but I don't have an example for that, but you know what it is. It's so what have you got? You've got a theme in 2 parts, 2 halves. Each half has 2 phrases, and the first phrase of each half is the same. That's the opening thing, and you hear that twice in each half of the melody. And in the finale, you hear the same thing. It's exactly the same kind of tune. And so when you listen to the symphony, you'll be familiar with that. But this particular movement is a sonata rondo. So it begins like a rondo with a theme that's in 2 halves, both repeated. And then you've got lots of motion music whizzing along, and you come to that fabulous second subject that I've already told you about. And that leads back to the rondo theme, the ritornello it's called. Then there's a big development section that leads back to the opening of the rondo, and a coda. And we'll get to the rest of the movement about that in a minute. Pay particular attention to the rhythm ba-da-dum, 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 like that. That's going to be very, 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 very important. And it's also related, by the way, to the melody of the first movement. Like that. You know, you get the ba-da-dums. The ba-da-dums are a unifying force in this symphony. Not as important as some of the other things, but it's there. So I'm just pointing it out. Let's listen to the entire exposition and first episode, which is the second subject that we've heard before, and the return to the opening, the ritornello. Here it is. All right, now I'm going to leave this big development type thing for you to enjoy yourself and the return of the first theme for the last time. However, there is one other unifying principle, a thing that really works quite marvelously in this symphony, and that is the joke at the very end in the coda. After the second subjects of the first movement and the finale, there is a Haydn does his traditional, well, it's traditional because he does it frequently and it always works, a little joke about how does the tune really go? How does that first movement go? I mean, for example, the first movement, it goes, it's not quite sure. It's like it's forgetting how the melody goes. Then all of a sudden it remembers and the thing finishes. Well, the same thing happens in the finale. Bum, 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 bum. It does that thing. It's a much more pronounced development of the doubt that we first heard in the first movement. The finale has a little more fun and takes a little bit more time to stretch the joke out. than the first movement does. But it's the same concept, the same idea. The idea of hesitation, confusion, a little bit of harmonic uncertainty. How is it going to end? But of course it does. So here are the two moments of doubt compared to each other. In the first movement, and then the last version, the coda to the finale, which I play all the way to the end. We're going to hear in both cases the second subjects of each, at the end of the second subjects of each, leading to the moment of doubt, leading to the end of each movement. So you get a sense of, how they all operate in context. That wonderful Haydnesque moment of uncertainty, which is so characteristic of what he does at the end of many of his symphonic movements. Here they are. First movement, little pause, finale. And that, my friends, is Symphony No. 102, one of the very, very greatest of all of the Haydn symphonies. An amazing piece, an incredible piece. It isn't nearly as well known as it should be. I've never seen it programmed. Never once. I mean, apparently it gets played once in a while, but I've never seen anyone do it. Never seen a major orchestra. And boy, it would just bring the house down. It would bring down more than just a chandelier, let's put it that way. So make up for lost time and give it a shot yourself. And keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.